So let's just talk about the criminal case on Eric Dunham, involved in a prostitution ring fairly recently, correct?
Eric Dunham is a convicted human trafficker who was on the run. He failed to show up for his sentencing, and that's when a warrant was issued for his arrest. He had recently pled guilty to 2 criminal counts that had to do with human trafficking. He operated a human sex trafficking ring in Tempe involving young Thai women. And these women claim that he forced them to come here to the Valley, and he also forced them to work as escorts to pay off debts for coming into the United States.
Force them to come here.
Forced them to come here to the Valley to work as escorts to pay off debts to him.
Do they describe him as someone who is dangerous? Can you kind of describe his demeanor? Was he a dangerous man?
The victims in this case told us that they did not want to testify against him because they were fearful.
What does that mean?
Exactly that. They were fearful of him. Initially, when the warrant was issued for his arrest, there was no indication that he was armed or a threat to law enforcement officers. But given what happened, Dunham pulled out a gun on an armed law enforcement officer, so I can only imagine the fear that these victims felt being held by him and forced into human trafficking every day.
How old were these victims?
They were young women. I don't have an age range for you.
Teenagers?
Yeah.
Adults.
Young adults.
Young adult women.
Okay. And when they were pursuing him yesterday, was it because he didn't show up for sentencing? Was that how this all came to fruition yesterday?
He failed to show up for sentencing last week, and that's when a warrant was issued for his arrest.
Was he out on bail?
Correct.
Okay. And how long had he been out on bail?
That's a good question. I don't know. I know he was arrested in May of 2016.
Okay.
He was arrested along with another co-defendant. Her name is Pakrin Koibuki. She was sentenced to 1.5 years in prison for her role. From my understanding, they were 50-50 partners in this sex trafficking ring. She would bring the women over from Thailand, and Dunham would meet them at the airport and then force them to become escorts.
What did they think they were coming here for?
They know?
It's not that detailed, okay.
No, don't have that information, and all of the victims speak Thai.
Oh, wow. So there was no indication that he would be someone who is considered armed and dangerous, but did these law enforcement agents know that he was someone that these women feared, that he could potentially be dangerous, or what?
The law enforcement agents who caught up with him yesterday, from my understanding, were initially involved in the case. And that's all the information that I have.
From my understanding, it was that the woman would promise them to bring them over here, and they would, as soon as they paid off their debt, to bring them to the United States, then they would be released. Was that the kind of the understanding that these women were under, that they would be released from prostitution after they repaid their debt for the transfer to the United States?
From my understanding, the initial statement that was made to the victims is that they would be released after being forced to be escorts and paying off their debts, but they never were released.
So it was their own debts that they were trying to pay off, like their travel debts from coming here?
Well, these alleged debts for being brought into the United States.
Just a false pretense.
Correct. Which is typically the case with these human trafficking victims.
Now, Bunner, what's his name?
Dunham.
Eric Dunham.
Yeah.
He no longer will be sentenced, and these women will no longer get justice. What does this mean? I mean, I know I just stated what it means, but I mean, especially for them.
I think that this is a reminder about the dangers that our law enforcement officers and prosecutors face every day as they work together to try and put these human traffickers behind bars.
You feel like it kind of highlights how dangerous these individuals can be too?
Absolutely.
Do you think that these women's, was this any form of justice for these women?
You would have to ask them.
Anybody else that you guys are working on right now that would be related to Dunham, besides the one woman who you already have?
We have current ongoing investigations into human traffickers all across the Valley. Our goal is to help rescue these victims of human trafficking and also to put these bad guys behind bars.
You were saying that his accomplice is serving a 1.5-year sentence?
That's correct. And Dunham, when agents caught up with him yesterday, he was facing 8 years.
Was he here eating?
No idea about what happened during the shooting. I think that's all HSI related.